Welcome back to Tug of Heart. Leroy and Lori, the twins, trying to sift, sort, solve, soothe. Um, Last time we just really got uh, deep into the conversation about Uvalde, and that was sad. I hate to admit it, but like most people, I find myself maybe not thinking about it as much, which somewhat saddens me. But I am thinking about all those children senselessly removed from this planet. Um, but we're moving on a little bit different, actually, to a subject that. Well, we're not qualified for any of these subjects, but I think it's one that's going to be challenging. And I like that. We're going to be talking about autonomy, not just autonomy in terms of, uh, isolating oneself, but autonomy of the heart. And Lori wants to put everything from a heart-driven viewpoint. So with that, let's get into this. Lori, hi, how are you?
Hi, my brother. I'm doing good. I actually had thought of doing this topic as a takeoff from where we left off, because one of the things that does happen, just exactly what you said, we have this strong response to something, right? And then our attention wanes because other things come up, other pressing things. People who sustain attention a little longer, some people for very good reason, they're more personally affiliated. Some are interested in just the political struggle, the fight. Being in a fight makes you feel alive and like you're participating in something. um, and I was thinking more along the lines of, we finish this conversation, we'll never be able to completely finish it, but we give it its due, at least from our heart. And so we take a look at just a little bit closer, looking outside ourselves, and at the same time introspectively, like how these things come to be. Is what our heart does and our morality law driven or self driven? Is there a sweeping thing we could say to everybody, to get some kind of to lessen people deciding the autonomy of their heart overrides the needs for safety of everybody? So that's what I was thinking. But to do that, you have to go back and just think, to begin with, what it means to be autonomous, either as a group, a community, and an agreement, or to be born into it, and then just of the self. So starting with the self, it's just plain and simple. I do what I want to do. I direct my own actions, and at least, if I abide by laws or rules or something that you say, that you've had the ability to influence, but ultimately it is my mind that sends the message to my body to act in a certain way. And I guess that's kind of where I would want to take off. And maybe you influenced it, but that's always with my permission. Always, I've okayed the final act.
So I'm going to ask you, and forgive me, because this is going to come across as just really challenging. Probably it feels like it. So don't take it the wrong way. Of course, you're my sister. You can't take anything the wrong way.
That I'm used to taking it from you.
So the fact that you and I are here weekly, a couple times a week, on Tug of Heart, doesn't that nullify our own autonomy of the heart? Because instead of a self-governance, we're actually looking to discuss this. We ask for outside input. We are actually working diligently to do the exact opposite of a heartfelt autonomy, So I feel good about that. Instantly, I feel good, because if for no other reason, because we are not the final authority, and we recognize that we are not the final authority.
Right.
We are with questions,
right,
and we want to celebrate the antidote to heart autonomy by speaking to one another, enjoying comments from other folks.
That's
So
right.
before we get too far, maybe you can shed a little bit of light on that.
Well, that is a good question that I wasn't super prepared for, but that's okay because the bottom line is we're here in agreement. And part of having the autonomy, and I'm going to cut to the chase with this right after I tell you this. I'll tell you my thoughts about a couple of, without knowing them individually, but when people go so far away outside what is the norm for society. But starting with us, we've made an agreement to come here. Now, there are times that you might find yourself in a hustle to get here. It's a little inconvenient, but you have still directed your body to continue that hustle and show up. So it is within your will, but it might be against your desires sometimes, but your will overrides that. And that's kind of like a higher order attitude. Now, for us, we're a couple of stubborn ones, okay? So I would say for us, it's come with age and a couple knots on the head, probably. And a lot of it too it comes from the discipline when you're younger. But to have autonomy does not mean that you've lost concern or care for others. But it would have to be a personal choice to have that. So if I say I really care about the state of the world, I really care when bad things happen. To just say that as sentiment, to throw myself into at least a discussion. I'm not saying we're anywhere near the highest level of what could be done, but we're saying, you know what, I at least can say right now, I want to be the kind of person who is willing to have this discussion. And so think of this word, okay? Because then I'm going to tell you as quickly as I can about the shooters. Plans, future. Showing up here today, part of it has to do with who I want to become. I'm not saying that I'm that person. I say all kinds of things wrong. You know that. But it's showing up with the intent of and hope of becoming better with time. And having plans is like having a certain commitment to yourself. And it helps to develop a strong sense of lining up your autonomy with what you desire, what you want. And it also helps you to override the impulses. Remember, we talked about being compulsive or compulsions and stuff. There are times when you have this vision of what you want for yourself or for life or what you think is most right. And so you hold those down. Now, something happens when people override that. Because one of the things that happened to the last shooter is they also canceled their own plans or they had none. And that was part of the problem. And I guess I'll just start with that because the second part of autonomy is how much autonomy legally can be imposed on people where it matters. So in this case, you say if say we had removed a weapon from this young man, would this not have happened? My thing is, it happened because it sounds like there was a removal of future plans, or maybe they didn't have. He did not see himself different. Now, one of them they said was bullied. And I'd been thinking, is it okay if I go on and just tell you my thoughts about the bully situation or no?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay, I'm
absolutely.
sorry. I'm like, but because I wasn't thinking about this until you brought it to my attention. I didn't have as much feeling as I should have. I can say that. I'm embarrassed to say it, but that's where I came to it. So sorry. But because we started talking, I started thinking about it in terms of autonomy. And I was thinking, one of the guys was bullied, okay? And what happens, and this is not an excuse, okay? This is free thinking. When a person is bullied, we lose a little autonomy. I'm going to take your lunch money, starts there. No, I say you won't. It's mine, and I want to hold it as part of on my person. It's removed. So you're being told you don't have the power to do that. And then again, and then again, and then again. And say at the same time at home, you're not exercising any kind of autonomy. You say an answer in school, it's lapped. You're just kind of rejected. In my imagination, and I'm not speaking for them, I was thinking, at what point does a bully say, I agree with you now. I'm not in control of my autonomy. Because when you say that, it also means I want it to be this, but I don't control my autonomy enough to reach that. And so you've lost some self-control. I want to grow up and just have a regular life. And then you're bullied and you say, I agree, I can't control this. I don't control my body. And then you go do something extreme because you didn't have a sense of control yourself anyways. That's not the answer, but that's where my thoughts led. I'll turn that mess over to you.
Yeah, I'm one of the last instructions you gave me, and you actually texted me twice. Once when you gave me a topic, and then to clarify the topic, you said, we're going to talk about autonomy. Then you said, we're going to talk about autonomy of the heart.
Right.
And so that's indelible. It can't be swayed no matter what, as I see it. Not
right.
A little bit different take on things, but I see it as like, yeah, that is absolute. Bullied or otherwise, right. Your emotions, how you feel at a heart level. And I'm trying to remove the mechanics of outsiders, the mechanics of finance, the mechanics of weather, health. There's a lot of other things in play, but it's like, how do we connect with that autonomy of the heart? You know, I guess by now we've probably shared this disclaimer 100 times, but it's like, we're not here to tell you how to think. We're just here to share things for consideration. And so when I think about like biblical instruction, you know, and we talk about autonomy and we talk about coming here to this open forum so that we can do the opposite of autonomy. Yet biblically, we're instructed to kind of clean up our own affairs before we can help others. How well can we help others if we haven't first helped ourselves? So there's this real dance going on where autonomy, we have to have an understanding, or at least what's the word? We have to have beliefs.
Right.
And we have to have protocol for different types of things. And we have to sort those out internally. As you would say, autonomously. We have to have conviction. That's the word I was looking for. Before we can go out and help, aid, and assist, we must first have conviction about something, about the relief, about. So as I kind of see this, and I know I see where you're going.
I think that's along the same lines, to tell you the truth.
Okay, so as far as like heart autonomy, I mean, I think that it's good, but it's this fine line. You know, I have to come here to the table and I have to tell you, Lori, you know, here's what I'm seeing, and you're sharing with me very openly, and together we develop personal autonomy. Not collective autonomy, but you influence a lot of the things that I believe, and you empower my conviction in talking about, you know, I dump it on the table, you dump your stuff on the table, I take my stuff back because I don't like your stuff. And then, no, I'm just kidding. I take it back a little bit different.
No, you know what? You're saying more beautifully what I said, because I'm a little more rigid in the way I talk and approach things, because I'm very technical, and the heart's not always technical. It's a delicate thing. And you're right. I'll start with how you started, the absolute. So the absolute is where we stand now. But in terms of a heart, that's not to say that it's not still developing. And one of the things that happens,
it's fluid.
Right. So it is absolute, especially when it ends in a certain state, right? But one of the things that we would hope for the youth, starting with our children and all of the children, everybody, is that they grow a desire within the autonomy of their own heart, that it's self-driven, a desire to do what's right, and careful with other people, right?
The definition of autonomy is self-governing.
Right. But we would want within their self-governance. And when I say right, I mean, I'm just hearing this for the first time. I forgot to look that up. But in self-governing, you want a child to be able to self-govern themselves in a way that is true about what it means to be human in the best way that we can be that. The other thing is, when you were saying how much, like can we convict a person? That comes from within, and it does. And I think one of the problems that we've had is, I call it like, I starting at the beginning of the pandemic, I called it the year of pontification, where everybody was their own pope. Nobody listens to anybody. I'll do me, you do you, agree to disagree, my truth, your truth. I stand on my own island and I do this. And what that speaks to, and I'm not saying everybody has to take every authority, but there is this kind of mindset and shift among people where they reject all authority. And they take great pains to convince the young that's a good thing to do, to reject authority. It's good to question it, but there is such a thing as proper authority. And so what happens is we've taught kids on many levels to do what you want. You don't need to wait. Not even time's not an authority. If you want to make this decision about the rest of your life today, that's your choice. Not even time is your authority. And so kids can make a decision for their entire life at 13, 14, 10, 8, right? But then the flip side is, so they defy authority. And then we say, let's add some laws, some rules to control it. But what good are any of them if you've taught this underlying conviction? You've encouraged, instead of encouraging, seek healthy authority, but instead you have encouraged this idea that your own conviction is all that matters. Then why would adding more laws from authority make any type of influence?
So during the growth years, where people are, creating identity and likes, wants, trying this, trying that, whether it's the first time you get to have electives in school.
Yeah, that's a good
and now we're introducing autonomy.
Wow, yes.
But at the same time, Lori, is it really autonomy with rules? So this is why I'm telling you, it's like this very, very, I'm listening to you speak, and you're talking about something that's at a whole different level, about nobility. And we want our children to exercise autonomy, but we want them to exercise autonomy a certain way for good. And this Uvalde, this troubled youth, he was being autonomous. I assure you.
The ultimate.
The
absolute, irreversible.
And this is what we teach. And so this is where it gets very, very muddy and it gets ugly. It's like they say, everybody likes to eat the sausage. Nobody wants to see how the sausage is made.
That's right.
So we teach them at a young age, like, okay, you are now in middle school, where you're going to start exercising some autonomy. You can choose your classes. You can choose, and even have a passing hour. I mean, I don't remember what they were called, but there was like free periods, and there was all sorts of different things. Then we have campus, then we have off-campus lunches, and so people kind of start to autonomously congregate.
Yes.
Because these decisions are really huge decisions, and generally they're inspired. We want to say they're autonomous, but they're not. They're inspired by those who have gone before, other, what we would say are troubled individuals. And so there's also the glamorization of, so everything that we teach is about autonomy, and yet we don't really want autonomy. What we want are people that are autonomous within our rules, within our governance, which again is kind of an oxymoron. We would like you to be autonomous within our rules. within our boundaries.
Well, part of being autonomous is that as a community, we're also an autonomy, and we have laws, and in our country, very unique and beautiful laws that encourage autonomy more than any country that's existed. I have to say, at least in intention, right? But when you say let them choose 2 classes in middle school, so we're telling them autonomy is good, but we're also saying now they're choosing 2 classes that are available. So choices have already been preset. So is that a choice? Second, we're saying now you get to choose. Some authority is trusting you enough to choose now. So what we're actually saying with experience is that it's important to develop autonomy, not that you get to have full-fledged autonomy, because, and I'm not saying that they ultimately they do, but ideally that autonomy should include a sense of how you live, among others, their autonomy. You cannot override somebody else's autonomy. And that's where and the reason I say all this, as awkward as it sounds, is because what you were saying last time. So we give the message that full autonomy is the best. You can decide what you want at 11. You don't need your mom's permission anymore. But then we keep throwing extra laws. And by we, I mean, whoever rises to the top as lawmakers gets this power to do it. It is very confusing.
So, Lori, as we kind of sit here and we look at this, I think that to celebrate autonomy within a book of laws, I would go back, and there's no apologies here, but as we go back to biblical times, the laws are written on our heart. We're not talking about laws,
natural laws.
Listen, just to sit and butcher an animal is real. That's not easy for most people. Most people, again, they want to enjoy the sausage, don't want to see how the sausage is made. Right. They enjoy a ribeye, not really interested in how the ribeye ended up there. They just want to eat the ribeye. So, and that's because it's unnatural. It's unnatural to take life. It's unnatural. It's unnatural because we're living and we see how frail life is. And so there's a discomfort there for a lot of people. And that's because it's written on your heart. Admit it, don't admit it. Listen, 95% of the population would have trouble or challenges processing their own food. When we're talking about beef, meat, pork, chicken, whatever. So when we're really shocked when we see something like this happen in Uvalde, because it's just not natural.
Right.
And because it is defying the laws that are written on our heart.
Natural law, yes.
Correct. And so that's why I say people are uncomfortable processing their own meat, because right. Because we understand how frail life is when we process dinner. So this kid, we're shocked by it. We're astonished by it because he was lacking that. He was one of the, if you think about like in reality, what percentage is he? When you look at all of these people and all of the people in our country, he makes up a percentile that is so minuscule that the rest of us just stand back, recognizing the laws written on our heart and say, whoa, that's, he got what he deserved, this, that, the other. And all of a sudden we start to just really be challenged by the autonomy that we celebrate in children that are self-taught. Children just pick up a paintbrush and they just start going to work. People pick up a guitar young kids, and they just start going to work. It's like they're autonomously doing beautiful things. But in as much as there is beauty in autonomy, there's also tragedy.
Right.
And you're not going to change that.
Well, yeah, but what you can do is we say laws are namely established to prevent harm to people. But when harm has happened to somebody, what happened is a crime. A crime is a crime because it's wrong. It's wrong to do. And so you have to say, in this sense, it's not the means or it's not that somebody wrote a terrible book and you say pens are horrible. They wrote, this is what Hitler used to write his book. It's criminal to act on that. A crime is a crime because you have hurt somebody else. But when we blame it on anything that's an object outside the autonomy of that individual, we neglect to look at something has gone wrong in a person. And we forget to say people can be dangerous. We can be dangerous to one another. And we have to kind of remember that. Otherwise, we think that we are mindless and we just need certain laws to do it. But we're more, like you said, fluid in heart than that, both in a positive and in a negative way, unfortunately.
So now we go back to our previous discussion a couple ago when we were talking about Ukraine.
Right. Okay.
And you have one person whom most of us would call a madman celebrating his autonomy, and yet his legions are committing the most atrocious of, they're violating the most imperial law by taking life.
Right.
And they're doing it in the name of one person's autonomy. So now these folks will forever be wrestling with their own heart's autonomy. But it's like, it's just, this is where we're at. This is, all of a sudden, it's justified. I mean, not just justified. You don't have legions saying like, no, not doing this. This is crazy. This is the issue with hierarchy.
Well, yeah, yes, and no, because we're going into more of the issue of what happens when we have conflicting values, and when you get to that, because there is some value and something that he perceives in the actions he's taking that is good. We don't see it as good. Or he just simply does not have control of his own autonomy while managing to be seemingly controlling a lot of what's happening in the world. So who in the world has control of their autonomy to say no so far?
So I can't disguise my posture on this because I'm challenged. I'm challenged by how I feel. I mean, I think that we can do a whole bunch of things, but we're so troubled by what's happening in Ukraine that we're sending arms. We're sending arms so that they can defend themselves against,
protect their autonomy, protect their
right.
Autonomy. Yeah.
Yet here in our own country, we would like to disenfranchise our citizens. We would like to diminish their ability. So this is why I say it's like it's such a dance, and we got these, it's not a universal. We have a governing body that will not only wants to take our weapons, but we're going to make you pay for weapons for another country.
Right.
We're going to take your earnings in the form of taxes. We're going to buy weapons that are way beyond what you can publicly purchase as a law-abiding citizen. We're going to issue those military-grade weapons to another country. We're going to gift them so that they can defend themselves. But here, we're going to aggressively pursue limits on your ability to defend yourself.
Because when it comes to here, they're saying that a gun shot the school, not that a little mini Putin went in and took lives. And I'm sorry I sound angry when I say that, not with you, but it makes me furious. There was any name that people use for Putin, sociopath, disconnected, whatever. The fact is, a child, but beyond the age of reason, by most standards, went in and did exactly what we're seeing somewhere else. And so now we've made the circle, we come back. And I have to tell you, this is where we begin yet again, and it's having the conversation, because part of the problem is people, when I began this, and with you, we had agreed, it's not that we think we know a thing. It's that we think we are late already getting to the table and saying somebody has to talk about something, right or wrong, and in an open, honest way. And with time, maybe you do this for 5 years, no results, but slowly, people start to respond to, in their freedom, to saying, we need to be talking about this stuff, not just watching it happen when this part doesn't line up with this. And because the other thing that people are, and one of the key components of autonomy and what governs our self, you said it was what, self-governing?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. One of the key components about self-governing, I had mentioned age of reason, is we do what we believe is reasonable. And we do it a lot of times. Go back to our first conversations when you talked about a kid that'll wet his pants on the playground. With time, that changes, right? But it was reasonable to enjoy that heartfelt moment then. But we are creatures of ration and reason. That's what separates us from beasts. Okay. So we have to be more reasonable and say, if this doesn't line up with that, if we're contradicting ourselves, we're outside of reason, and unreasonable things start happening more and more and more in our own country, in other countries. And so again, we have no answer except to say, we've begun the conversation.
I think that's a really good way to table this, because it's just a discussion. I mean, I listen, I have owned firearms since I was legally old enough to own firearms. Never had a mishap. Am I lucky? Some would say. Am I educated? Some would say. All I know is that in the event that there has to be a plan. If we know, if the same body that wants to restrict firearm ownership is arming the Ukraine after the fact, are they making provisions? Are we like in this situation where it's like there is a plan for rearming our own citizens when things get out of control? Because
no, it stands to reason, if it is within reason, we would have to beg from another country as well.
That's not a good plan to me.
Well, listen, Ukraine was under Putin. We, in the same way that we are currently under what we perceive to be one head. And then a portion said they can't live with that. They exercised their autonomy, and the one head that had already not allowed weapons has countered now. And this is, it was a series of it's always in increments that they build up to these
sure
things,
so
right?
the same way that we want to protect autonomy is the same way that they are currently funding and arming Ukraine's autonomy.
It's not congruous.
They are protecting it.
Outside reason. It's outside.
And they're protecting it with only one thing: arms.
Right.
Wow. So,
I mean,
wow.
And so here we are, but we've at least seen it to this end where we're back to where we start. And hopefully it gives people a chance to think. And that doesn't mean we're going to agree on the answer, but we can't take away the fact that a person has called for the action in Ukraine, and a person allowed their own personhood to call for harm here as well. They were each individuals.
Listen, if until there's a law that denies people the ability to have malicious autonomy. Until there's a way to enforce that law, I have a funny feeling that this is, we're at a different place. We never saw these things. These things weren't widespread. You know why? Because we were out until the lights came on. When the street lights came on, we came inside, we bathed, we ate. We were watching Scooby-Doo, and then that became bad. And Wile E. Coyote became bad. But you know what? Cardi B, Song of the Year. And so we're absolutely a country of contradictions.
And there will be, while there's changes. So it's just trying to not have an inner contradictions within yourself, because at least we have to try to be consistent in ourselves to come as a consistent, autonomous person to the table for the conversation, which means you cannot be practicing two things and show up and want to discuss one part, right?
So I'm going to exercise my autonomy right now and say that we're going to bring this to an end.
Got it. Fair enough.
If you enjoyed this talk, comment, like, share, comment, get involved, jump in this conversation.
Help us.
Let's just continue the dialogue. Lori, take us out of here.
All right. Until next time, friends, you can like and share the podcast, and also Strong Island. Give us ideas for directions we can take to have a reasonable conversation, or even a disagreement something that we're overlooking in our conversation, which is quite likely, and we're willing and open to address that as well. Until next time, farewell.
Adios.